Good evening, folks, and thanks for joining us once again. You know, this time of year, as we're going through all these holidays and people start contemplating the giving and the receiving and the true meaning of the holidays and what it's all about, peace on earth, goodwill towards men, we thought we would devote a special episode of Trekosophy to trying to answer one of the biggest philosophical conundrums around this holiday. How is it that Santa Claus can get to every house in a single night and deliver all those toys? Well, it turns out that, like so many other things, Star Trek provides the answer. You want to visit every house in the world in a single night? Only one way to do it, and that's to travel faster than light. So obviously, Santa's got a souped-up warp drive in his sleigh, and it's operated by his chief engineer, Chris McGee.
We've got a hot cocoa imbalance. We need more peppermint lithium crystals.
Now, there's also the little problem of sneaking down chimneys, because if anybody's ever seen a fireplace, it's not exactly built for a fat man to go sliding through. So how does Santa get down the chimney? The talented skills of our transporter officer, Ben McLean.
I'm detecting 3 life signs, 2 Vulcans, and 1 elf. Or is it that 2 elves and 1 Vulcan? Or are they just the same thing? Who knows?
The other big secret is how he keeps track of everyone and whether they're naughty or nice. How does he do that? With the help of his elves. Elves have pointed ears. You know who else has pointed ears? The Vulcans. Clearly, he's using Federation sensors to scan the planet. And his science officer for this task is Ash Hume.
I have a specially developed nefariosity meter to check out who has been naughty and who has been nice. Oh, shut up, Fuzzy!
Wow, triple abuse.
Okay.
That was great.
That was awesome. That was
And I am Bill Allen, a.k.a. the elf in a red shirt. And this is Trekosophy.
You must be one of those elves I cleaned up in that Viscera cleanup detail game. Does anybody see that?
I've seen it, but I haven't bought it
I
yet.
haven't seen the elves. Did they add elves?
Yeah, there's the main game, which happens in space. It's like the best red shirt simulator I think there's ever going to be. You know, the people who have all the crappy jobs on Star Trek, this is the game for them. And it simulates that experience as a janitor in outer space after a space battle. You have to clean up all the body parts and gunk and alien goo everywhere.
I kept knocking over the bucket when it was full of blood and making a bigger mess.
Yeah, I know.
And then walking through it and leaving footprints.
Yeah, you have to think about it strategically. Actually, there's lots that's just OCD nightmare that game is. Anyway, they
Santa's red shirt elves, Zappy, Squelchy, and
they have spin-off games
that fast
that came out before the main game. One of them's cleaning up after ninjas in Shadow Warrior.
Yeah, I got that.
And the other one is Santa's Rampage, which is cleaning up after the night Santa went crazy. And that one is a lot better than the main game, actually. It's really funny.
Based off of a Weird Al song?
Yeah, certainly the concept.
Santa went crazy.
Yeah, certainly the concept is based on the Weird Al song. I don't know if they actually have any copyright in there, but
Yep, and then you get to go onto the holodeck to play the guy who gets to clean up after Will Riker in the holodeck.
yeah.
Okay, so our topic for tonight is The Trouble with Tribbles, which was billed as the Christmas episode back in 1967 when it aired.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I tried to steer us back on track.
Yeah. We watched that and also Trials and Tribulations,
Well,
which
I didn't have time
revisits.
for both.
Oh, well. Try and remember what you can about Trials and Tribulations as well. Then I think you listed that as one of your favorites and certainly
Absolutely.
connects with this episode. So any theme that's in either of those should work for today. And let's see. As far I'm assuming everyone's seen. I mean, it's The Trouble with Tribbles. Everyone's seen it. So I don't think we have to give much of a synopsis to our audience. It's that Star Trek episode that everyone's seen. You know the one. That about covers it. there's several themes going on here. There's the Cold War themes with the Klingons standing in for the Soviet Union. There's the idea of anger and violence in the fight scene, and just all that humor with Chekhov and Mr. Scott. A lot of great humor in there. And those are kind of in a lot of Star Trek episodes. I'd say that the main philosophical theme that we are presented with in The Trouble with Tribbles is this idea that we treat different animals and different animal species according to completely different standards that don't even seem consistent with one another. And from one point of view, the Tribbles are a harmless mammalian species that make a pleasant sound. And from another point of view, they're an ecological menace that could starve a planet out of its food supply. And the truth is they're both. And they can be both. At least it seems that the truth is that they can be both.
Well, I know there's a lot of difference between what people see as a menace and what people see as a pet. And I think in Australia there was a move to get the Easter bunny replaced with what they call the Easter bulby, which is a native species, because actually in Australia rabbits are a hell of a menace.
Yeah, in fact, that was exactly where David Gerald got the idea for this story, was the fact that rabbits breed like crazy in Australia, and that they can be they're cute and fluffy, and everybody thinks they're adorable, but they can be a real menace when there's too many of them.
Yeah, they reckon, I can't remember exactly, but they reckon that within a year a rabbit can be born, and within a year they can become a great grandmother.
Wow.
Or something. They breed like rabbits, which is
exactly.
the whole
That's
point of the Easter bunny, really. But the idea was that to get people in Australia thinking less about rabbits being cute and thinking more ecologically in terms of the bilby, which is actually looks a bit like a rabbit. It has long ears and all, but they're actually an endangered species.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how it is over there. Certainly in Australia and New Zealand, there were many species brought over when the Europeans colonized, just, for no other reason than that they made the place feel more like Europe. And I guess make people think that they would be less homesick or some such thing. So
but instead of becoming less homesick, they became sick of home.
Yeah, basically. So you've got your foxes were brought over for hunting, and rabbits were brought over, cats, dogs. In New Zealand, we have possums, which from Australia, which have become quite a problem. There are somewhere in the region of 2 times more possums than people now. Hedgehogs, stoats, weasels in New Zealand that eat all the bird eggs. And they basically decide, we love it here, which I guess is what the Tribbles, how the Tribbles would have felt with all that quadritriticale around, bred like crazy, and basically, in the eyes of many people, of course, people being arguably the most damaging introduced species there is, messed up the landscape terribly.
Yeah, and I believe at one point you wanted to mention how does humankind basically decide what's a pest and what's a pet? The difference between the two. Well, in response to that, I can say this much at least. I kind of agree. I hate to, but I kind of agree with Dennis Leary's description for what is a pet and what is saving the animals. He talks about saving the animals and how we want to save all these endangered species and so forth. We only want to save the cute ones.
Yeah.
Why don't we line them up one by one, have animal auditions? What are you? I'm an otter. What do? I swim around on my back and do cute little human things with my hands. Okay, you're free to go. And what are you? I'm a cow. Well, get in the truck. I'm an animal. I have rights. Now you're a baseball glove. Get in the truck. But it's almost true. I mean, you think about it. We don't find spiders or most other anyway, insects cute at all. What do we do when we see them? Anybody?
We call, well, what my wife does is she calls me and says, go fight it, go kill it.
There you go.
And the thing is, we kept doing that, and they kept coming back, and they were bigger and bigger and bigger. I now have a specific rake that is not my yard rake and rake. It's my indoor rake for killing spiders, because I don't want to get close enough to those things to actually, because when they start getting to be the size of your hand.
Oh my gosh, you're exaggerating, I presume.
I thought I was, but no.
No.
She tells me that. I mean, there was a lizard one time.
I grew up in Australia. A spider the size of your hand is not an exaggeration.
Well, for Australia, it's not. For Maryland, it's a freaking
what are they
horror
called? Camel
movie.
Spiders, I think, or something. Those giant ones that are about the size of a house cat.
Yeah, the camel spiders are freaky. This wasn't that. These are just really, really, really large and vicious-looking wood spiders. So, years ago, my wife, a lizard got in the house somehow. One of those little yard salamanders.
Huh.
And she says, oh, my God, you have to go kill this thing. It's this big. And she makes it sound like the size of my arm. And she says, don't kill it. Catch it and release it in the wild. It's like, if I don't kill it, the thing's going to eat me if it's that big. And I go looking, and it's like 3 inches long. But when they move so fast, they look so much bigger. So then she says, oh my God, there's this giant spider or something. And okay, it's a normal sized spider. I grab my shoe. I go down in the basement. I see it on the wall. And I go back up the stairs and I put my shoe down and I grab a rake because that thing was freaking huge. She was not exaggerating this time. Wasn't quite the size of my hand, but the body was the size of my thumb.
Oof.
And that's extremely large for spiders in this area.
So yeah, my point is that if it's something that creeps us out, we don't try to save it at all. We don't think it's cute. We don't think it's a pet. Well, most of us anyway. There are some of us who actually keep spiders as pets and snakes and other such things. But for the most of us anyway, we don't. That was all I really wanted to contribute to that particular part of the argument.
And I think that's part of what makes tribbles such a pervasive threat is because they are cute and fluffy, and they make that soft purring noise that apparently Ash likes to smack around, but it doesn't bother anybody else. You just smacked the hell out of that tribble. We all heard it.
I love smacking animals. No, I don't. I don't love smacking animals. I do not, for the record, I do not love to smack at animals.
Yes, Peter, you can stop sending those emails now. Thank you.
We'll be getting hate mail from our fan.
Treatment. People for the ethical tribble assimilation.
What's ethical about that?
Are you kidding me? Give tribbles to the Borg. It'll solve 2 problems, or at least, I don't know. But anyway, tribbles, they're cute, they're fluffy, so you like them, you keep them as pets, and then they get one little scrap of food, because you're not going to let your pet starve to death. And the next thing you know, you've got 50,000 tribbles overrunning everything and destroying your ship. That's why the rabbits were so bad in Australia, because nobody's going to see rabbits as a menace. Everybody made fun of Worf and the great Klingon tribble hunt, but let's face it, they kind of didn't have a choice in that matter. I mean,
well, they wiped out the tribble homeworld where the tribbles were a part of the ecosystem and they were, kept in check by all those predators. It's the trouble is not so much when they're, them being around as them being around in a place they're not supposed to be.
Right. Taken out of their natural environment.
And there's so many questions about that tribble homeworld. I mean, I know we think it's bad of the Klingons to wreck it, but if that's the tribble's natural environment and we see how quickly they reproduce, What sort of massive super predators with
Well,
hyper accelerated metabolism
actually-
were
I
on
think there
this
was
planet?
there was a point in Enterprise where
see-
Phlox fed a trouble to one of his animals, and he said,
Well,
you know,
you
the only things
also
that keep them in
see-
check are the number of predators on their homeworld.
That's true, but you also see a Tribble Predator in the animated series episode, More Tribbles, More Troubles.
You know, I haven't seen that one yet. I need to go finish watching the animated cartoon series. I've
Yeah,
seen
there's
some of them,
not
but
that many of them, so yeah.
yeah, but it's just, you start sitting through them and it's like, oh wow, it's half of them seem like they just didn't really have the actors. They
The
just
weird thing is
borrowed
that
sound clips.
it had all the sound. Well, it's true. I mean, they reused a lot of sound clips and even animations in order to be on budget. You often see the characters put their hands in front of their mouths when they're like talking to themselves, again, to save money on animating the mouths. But the episode in particular, that More Tribbles, More Troubles, the person who animated that particular episode is colorblind, and so he made all of the Tribbles in that episode pink. Every one of them.
Oh, wow. There's a good quote. I was just looking it up. Let me see if I can get it. There's a good quote from C.S. Lewis. I'm always recommending C.S. Lewis. It's from That Hideous Strength, C.S. Lewis's third space trilogy novel, and it's by a very interesting character named McPhee. And McPhee is the atheistic Humean skeptic of the book.
Humean?
As in David Hume.
Okay.
And he's a good guy. And that's the thing. Lewis underlines the point that, not all atheistic type people are like the villains in his novel. He's being very specific about an ideology, a specific ideology, not about, atheism or skepticism in general, but a very specific thing is what his book is attacking. So that's why McPhee's in the book. He's like they even say at one point, he's our skeptic. It's a very important office. They say that at one point. And so McPhee is a very disagreeable guy. He argues with everyone, and I love him. He's great. Anyway, in their house, in this book, the good guy's house, they have this sort of harmony with nature thing going on with a bunch of sort of tame animals that live in perfect harmony with the humans in their house. And so McPhee is a Scotch skeptic of the Humean tradition who says whether the animals are friends with the humans or not. They have a discussion on that. And he says, "The question is worth raising, Mr. Director, because I submit that it points to an essential falsity in the whole system of this place. I mean that there is a half-hearted attempt to adopt an attitude towards irrational creatures which cannot be consistently maintained. And I'll do the justice to say that you've never tried. The bear is kept in the house and given apples and golden syrup till it's near bursting." And
Scottish,
then
isn't he?
and then a lady interrupts him saying, "Who's always giving him the apples? That's what I'd like to know." He's the one who gives it to him himself. But he says, "The bear, as I was observing, is kept in the house and pampered. The pigs are kept in a sty and killed for bacon. I would be interested to know the philosophical rationale of the distinction." And then Mrs. Maggs, the lady, goes, "Why, I think it's just silly. Who ever heard of trying to make bacon out of a bear?" And then the conversation ends. But I thought that was great. It contrasts the sort of common, ordinary type of thinking with the philosophical thinking of McPhee. But he raises a legitimate question: why do we treat certain animals very differently than we treat other animals? And you touched on it on your own steam earlier, Chris. That we're very concerned about endangered species when it's the cute species that we like to actually
Well, I can't
see.
take credit for that. That's Dennis Leary right there.
I think it's quite a lot of
for the
people say
ages.
that sort of thing.
Yeah, he's certainly not the only one either. A lot of people say, I'm a conservationist. I believe in conservation, but you can't care about everything. And
you're still going to kill that spider on your wall.
Yeah, I know. There's a good, funny political cartoon about how there's the PETA office, and It says the people for the ethical treatment of animals, and then written in marker underneath it, except mice. And there's a mouse trap in the room. I mean, some of the animals can't survive without eating some of the other animals because they're carnivores by nature. So it just the whole PETA thing is just blatantly irrational.
Life feeds on life.
Yeah, and so just on the face of it, that kind of extreme animal rights sort of activism is just not tenable. It just can't be consistently maintained. On the other hand, not caring about animals or the environment at all is also another extreme that is just beneath human, I would say. I mean, we should have some concern about those kinds of things and try to be good stewards of the environment and try to conserve the environment. So how do you find a balance in, an Aristotelian golden mean between those two extremes? But another aspect of this that I wanted to bring up for you guys to discuss was how was the idea of pets. You see, I know you have a dog, Bill, right?
3 dogs, 1 cat, and 1 harbinger of the apocalypse kitten.
Wow, you really have a lot. And what about the rest of you? You all have pets?
I have.
Ash,
I have no
Chris?
pets. No. I used to have.
Ash doesn't
I have
pets.
had pets.
But not
at
now.
the moment, I don't. Yeah, well, at the moment, I don't live in a situation where I can have pets. So, but I have had them.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
All right. What about you, Chris?
I do have 1 cat. She's been with me for about 10 years now, and I still can't decide whether I love her or hate her. It just depends on her mood that day. But real quickly, before you continue on with that thought there, hold on for just a moment. I wanted to mention something else that another comedian had said once, George Carlin, talked about how, talking about saving species and so forth, endangered species. He said, species will disappear at a rate of about 25 a day, irrespective of humans' behavior. And I'm wondering, what are these 25 a day that keep disappearing off the face of the planet?
A lot of them are obscure plants.
Yeah, so
Really? Okay.
there are a lot of species. I mean, there are heaps of species that now that we just don't know about even.
Yeah, there are a lot of species that turn up that
I'm wondering if a lot
died
of them are
before we
bugs
ever
of some
found them.
sort.
Yeah, there's a lot of bugs. There's a lot of plants. There are far less of the interesting species than there are of the boring species.
Yeah.
But
Anyway,
there
I
are a
just
lot
wanted
of
to mention
birds,
that.
like in Madagascar and stuff, that are just really interesting creatures that we might lose by introducing. We very nearly lost by introducing predators to what was before humans came a predator-free environment. So yeah, there are some concerns there, and those are some legitimate concerns. Although there are so many human problems in the world that I find it hard for animal problems to get even onto my priority list very often. I mean, we have all this money that goes into Africa for all these nature reserves, while the Africans are in such squalor a lot of the time and can't even get their economies going. And
we haven't even learned how to take care of each other yet. How are we going to take care of other species?
And then there are people who are like, Africans shouldn't try to develop because global warming. And I'm like, yeah, maybe we should try to get the Africans to develop, try and find, environmentally healthy ways to develop or whatnot. But you just don't tell them don't develop because of global warming. It's like, we're all going to die from global warming, so just die without the global warming. Well, those are some great options right there. Well, I have a lot of rants about the overpopulation alarmism and global warming, but I don't want to get onto that. What I wanted to bring up was the idea of pets. We treat pets very differently from strays. There's some point at which a stray becomes a pet, and so it gains this sort of special status. But people give pets this special status in their lives that's not quite a family member, but not quite. I mean, not quite a family member in the same way human family members are, but which are nevertheless very important. And quite how far people go for their pets is a good question, because I noticed there are people who, well, there are a lot of people who just have pets and it's fine, and it's just a normal thing, and it makes their lives better, and I think it makes the pets' lives better, and it's better for everybody. But then there are also people whose whole lives end up getting consumed by this obsession with their pets. Those crazy cat ladies who end up with like a whole house full of cats, to where they can't even take care of them. They have so many. And, there are people who keep these huge dogs, even when the people themselves are too old to take care of the dogs, but they won't get rid of the dogs because they're so emotionally attached to them. But the dogs just cause so much problems for their whole life. I mean, I had someone that I know who their dog was suffering. They really should have put their dog down a lot sooner than they finally did. But yeah, there's some people who just let their whole lives be taken over by pets. And if we look at the amount of money that Americans spend on pets, it just seems somewhat unreasonable. Just there's a sheer amount that goes into pets. Now, I don't want to say that we shouldn't have pets. I think that's reasonable to have a pet. But how do you keep that? How do you keep that in balance? And how do we figure the status of animals and pets and so on in relation to humans? This is a moral question right here. Is there
The cat's meowing, Bill.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm playing with the cat. Little
Speaking
Stormageddon.
of,
she's trying to comment in the discussion. There's a good scene in a dramatization of Daniel Boone at one point that I remember. Daniel Boone and his exploring settling company are trying to get away from some Indians who are chasing them, some unfriendly Indians who don't like the idea of Europeans settling west of the Appalachians. So they're chasing the would-be settlers back into the east, and they can't take all their livestock. The livestock are slowing them down. So Daniel Boone orders the party to just basically release their cows. This would stop the Indians because the Indians would want to get the cows, and that would allow the settlers to escape. And there was a lot of protest because cows are worth a lot of money. And Daniel Boone makes an interesting statement at this point in this drama. He says, I ain't never yet seen the cow that was worth a single human life to save it. Is that true? Is it true that a human life is worth more than any amount of animal life? And then, if that isn't true, I think some people, if taken to the furthest extremes, that statement doesn't seem quite right. One human life might, it might be reasonable for someone to sacrifice their life to save, because they want to save an animal species, an important animal species, or something like that. So that maybe that's not quite true if it's the whole species that might fail or something like that, But how do you balance that out? That's a question. I'm still talking here as I keep hoping you guys will speak up, and no one is.
Well, we were waiting. I think what it boils
You
down
need to
to.
give us a chance.
I'm sorry.
I'm
sorry.
To get an award
I'm
in
used to getting
edgewise.
interrupted all the time, so and then I don't get interrupted. Sorry.
I think what it boils down to is there's a lack of absolutism on the issue. You can't really say that a human life is worth more than an animal's life because it really depends on the human. I mean,
oh yeah, Hitler's probably less valuable than your cat.
Yeah, and it's the same thing with animals in general. I mean, a lot of PETA types will criticize people who love their family pet. Well, you wouldn't eat your dog, would you? Yeah, you're a hypocrite if you eat meat. And it's like, it's not hypocrisy. It's just not absolutism. It's a
Which
case
is
by
weird
case.
because a dog would eat meat. You have to feed dog meat.
Right.
Anyway.
Yeah.
But it's, I mean, exactly. It's like, you can say that some animals are good and some animals are bad, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's when you try to apply some type of absolutism. Is a human life worth more than a pet's? It depends on the situation. I'm kind of a good old boy in that regard. You mess with my dog, I'm gonna shoot you. I'm not gonna. I take very good care of.
That probably goes for all of your stuff, though, not just your dog.
Well, my dog and my family more than like my stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah, dog isn't
I
really
see.
stuff.
Okay.
Dogs are people too.
But it's okay if they mess with your ex-wife.
Well, yeah,
or
she's
your
my ex-wife.
or your in-laws.
I mess with my in-laws myself. That's my job. But no, I mean, ex-wife. She's decided to become an ex. She doesn't want anything to do with you anymore. You've opted out of her family, or she's opted out of yours, or whatever. You don't have an obligation to all 7 billion people on this planet.
I guess what you're saying is,
Well,
is
you
perhaps
don't-
it's down
sorry.
to relationships
Yes.
Well,
and how
yeah.
close they are to you.
You can't have an unlimited obligation to everybody. It's just, we haven't been created with minds great enough to even comprehend that kind of an obligation fully. That's just too big for anyone to handle. And that's a problem with have you guys heard of Peter Singer?
Heard of.
Peter Singer is a contemporary, well, he's reputed to be a contemporary ethicist. And I hate his guts, basically.
Okay.
I hate his guts based on some of the really extreme things he said about abortion. But I had to read something of his completely unrelated to abortion for my ethics course in college. I had to read his book, The Life You Can Save. And in it, he expressed the idea that people in the United States and in Western nations, we have so much, and we spend so much of our money on frivolities that we really should be spending every spare bit of money we can get our hands on charities, because the rest of the world is so much in need of help. And he tries to justify as much as possible the need to sacrifice to give to charity from as many different ethical systems as he can think of. And all of the ones except utilitarianism kind of fall flat when he says it, because he's a hardcore utilitarian, one of the hardest utilitarians I know of. I read his book and I thought, well, he definitely overstates his case. He expresses not an unlimited obligation to the whole rest of the world, because we're limited by means, but he does express this great crushing obligation to the rest of the world on every individual person's part, which would make it difficult to preserve the kind of system internally that causes us to be successful when they aren't, these other places in the world aren't successful, and so we have to have something that's sustainable here first, and then we can, move outwards. So there's that. But even he recognizes that you can't have an unlimited obligation to the rest of the world. The obligation has to stop somewhere. But where? It's hard to say where. But yeah, I think you have a point that there are these sort of spheres of moral responsibility that, based on where you are and what your means are and how much power you have.
Yeah, it's like I say all the time. I consider all you guys my friend, but you ain't getting a kidney.
That's all right. The feeling is mutual.
Yeah, you can't have an unlimited obligation. But on the other hand, you do have some obligation, you know. I think you encounter someone who's in need, you know, you may have some obligation where you are now, and finding, you know, little ways to get people to, you know, to a place where they're helping is, I think, you know, very valuable. And helping even with some of this animal stuff, it's just, that is in itself a very difficult problem. How to determine which charitable causes are most important that you actually need to support, because you can't support them all. You just can't. It's impossible. So how do you choose? You know, that is extremely difficult. I don't know. Maybe this wasn't such a good topic because it's hard to get anybody talking about this.
It's I mean it's an odd thing. I mean everybody's trying to gather that. I mean we're all generally in agreement, but it's hard to. I mean I don't know what to say. It's
yeah.
I'm thinking. Well, I'm also trying to figure out what else we can do to Trekify the conversation a little bit and get back on the Tribbles. Could we discuss Tribbles and their racism?
Yeah.
How are Tribbles racism? Oh, well, yeah, they don't like Klingons.
They have like a vicious reaction to Klingons.
Yeah. It's like
Terror.
we're gonna get hate mail, but I was gonna say it's like Gaydar except for Klingons. Just that was there's no serious
Gaydar, but
there's no serious point behind that. I'm just
I suppose Klingons are predators though, and Tribbles are a prey species. So
Tribbles are what?
Tribbles are a prey species.
Oh.
And Klingons are predators. So I guess in a way it kind of makes sense that they would have a I guess a special evolutionary inkling that the Klingon, you know, oh my god, Klingon bad.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, trying to ascribe evolutionary causes to fictional beings is kind of questionable.
Well, Star Trek subscribes to evolution, so I don't think it's that much of a leap.
Oh well, yeah, but what I mean is, you know, that kind of scientifies what seems not very scientific. I mean, you know, unless they say it in the script, I don't know. It just seems kind of iffy to say, you know. I don't know. Would the Klingons have been in contact with the Tribbles long enough for that even to work? I mean,
oh, who knows what history they have? They did wipe out the planet.
The Tribble homeworld.
They know what Tribbles are.
Maybe the Tribbles actually have a latent intelligence or collective intelligence that's racist against Klingons. It just senses when there's a Klingon nearby and just goes bananas. Goes on a racist rant in Tribble language.
The idea of Tribbles having intelligence, that's a scary thought. It puts a whole new perspective on what they're doing. They really are invading, aren't they?
Yes.
Which means the Klingons save the galaxy.
Yeah, totally. Totally. Bill the utilitarian.
Until
okay.
Until Odo comes along and messes it up for them.
Oh yeah, by bringing the Tribble along. Oh, that was Odo who did that, wasn't it? The thing is, why
was all Odo?
Why does Odo like Tribbles? That didn't make much sense to me. He's not a humanoid.
Yeah, he's an odd.
Maybe he's just
an odd one.
Or this wasn't during his human period, was it?
I can't remember. Was that?
Yes.
You know, I think it was.
Yes, it was.
Okay, that explains it.
Early 5th season.
That explains it. So he's human during this episode, and I forgot about it. Huh. You forget something new every day. You know, it's like the opposite of you remember.
That's the one.
It's the opposite of
well, you certainly do.
Yeah.
You remember one thing and forget two.
Yeah. At least when I'm doing linear algebra.
But that's a different subject
Yeah.
entirely. But it seems like we've exhausted, or just about anyway, exhausted all topics on this particular subject.
Yeah.
So
The only other place we could go would be to talk about pregnancy, which let's save that for the episode when we do the proxy pregnancy of Major Kira. Talk about pregnancy then.
Well, I do like that as an idea. They're born pregnant. I think there are a couple of animals in reality who have sort of that kind of thing, but they're mostly slugs and stuff.
I also like some of the more off the subject of tribbles, but still on the subject of the show of this episode. The little touches in this episode that you probably never saw before. For example, when the Klingon is trying to antagonize Scotty and Chekhov into fighting, and he's, making fun of Captain Kirk, and Chekhov just downs the rest of his vodka, and he's getting up out ready to fight, and of course Scotty says, no, it's not worth fighting over. Just sit down and drink your drink. And at that moment, he swaps out Chekhov's empty glass with the other crewman's glass, which does not contain vodka. So in the next shot, you see Chekhov take a drink of this other drink, and then he does a double take, looking at it, thinking, this isn't vodka. And you probably have never even noticed that before. But now, when you see that scene from now on, you'll notice it. You'll see that.
Chris, it's like a mind virus.
It's one of those little touches
you want to get.
Oh, by the way,
you want to get Chekhov really riled up. Tell him Shakespeare wasn't Russian or something.
Oh, by the way, you just lost the game. I'm sorry. That thing is so stupid. Anyway,
didn't quite catch that reference. But
well, look it up. That means
he's still winning.
Yeah, he's still winning, I guess. look it up online.
Winning, duh.
Yeah, look it up online if you want to lose.
Right.
Yeah, it's a stupid psychology thing that I think it started in the 70s. It's just called The Game.
Okay.
Capital T, capital G.
And the one moment that actually made me laugh out loud in this episode was, of course, when Kirk's completely, piled on with Tribbles, and McCoy is standing there. He's talking about that they're just, some of them are dead. And Kirk asks him to tell him, we'll find out what killed them. And he says, well, I haven't even figured out what keeps them alive yet. And Kirk just shoots him this look. Doesn't say anything. Just gives him a look.
He gives him the look.
The look. Yeah. And so McCoy says, okay, I'll try to figure it out. And that just made me laugh out loud. That look that Kirk gives him.
I love it when it sounds like, he's going to order somebody to be arrested or something like that. Throw that Federation guy in the brig or something like that. And he goes, will you please close that door?
Yes.
The tribbles keep falling out of the door.
The funny thing is, that was actually almost ad-libbed, because there were two grips behind that wall that were still busy thinking they needed to fill up that bin. They had no idea that the bin had been emptied yet. So they were throwing the tribbles in there one by one, and every now and then you see Kirk look behind them thinking, are those grips done yet? I mean, what the hell?
You can see Kirk look right up the chute, and you think that he'd be seeing Cisco and Dax up there, but I don't know. I mean, how did he not see them? It's just...
Yeah, those two grips were played by... Avery Brooks and Terry Farrell. That was
they were probably 8 and.
That was one of my favorite moments from the Deep Space Nine version of this episode. Was because you see the classic scene and a couple of tribbles keep falling out, and that's because they're looking for a bomb.
A tribble bomb.
So we're gonna have to do a Trials and Tribulations episode.
Yeah. Those guys from the Temporal Mechanics Investigations Department? They have their own spin-off novel series now.
They probably have their own Twitter account by now.
Well, I mean, they have their own spin-off novel series that's official from Pocket Books. I'm not even kidding. I mean, look it up. They have their own books just about them, those two guys. I mean, the world of Star Trek paperbacks is just such, that rabbit hole just seems to go on and on.
Huge.
On and on.
I'm waiting for them to get back to when the time of the series. I'm like, yeah. I was sort of with them until they moved so far ahead that it became unrecognizable as the kind of stuff that.
Oh, the Temporal Investigations books, they actually go further into the future?
Yeah, no, not them. Like the relaunch books.
Oh, the relaunch books. Yeah. Oh, the DS9 relaunch books. Yeah, I got stopped on that. I think it was the Mission Part 1, the one where they go to the planet that communicates in color.
Oh, Mission
Yeah,
Gamma.
you talked about that
for
once
like
before.
A chapter.
Oh, well, okay. Yeah. Well, it's just I was so bored of that part. I wanted to know what's going on back on DS9. I don't care what's going on in the Gamma Quadrant. And but this book wants to tell me all about interesting planets in the Gamma Quadrant that we'll never see on television. So what's the point? But I eventually got bored and gave up on that book. I need to pick it up again one of these days because I really want to find out about Cisco coming back and all the stuff that's supposed to happen in the relaunch books.
Cisco comes back.
It's like way deep into the series, isn't it?
Unity.
Yeah. But that's like,
as the book
what book is that? Isn't it like book 20 or something? It's like really.
It's just after Mission Gamma.
Oh, okay. So I was almost there.
Yeah, there's 4 books in the Mission Gamma series.
But I was almost there.
And then and a couple of others. That sort of like one's about Jake, I think another one's about Klingons.
Wow, they have a lot of writing in the DS9 relaunch. Yeah.
And then there's Unity.
Did they ever stop publishing those? I mean,
no, they haven't stopped. They haven't stopped.
Oh, that's
They're like
good.
10, 15 years ahead of the series now.
Oh, I see.
That's why I sort of gave up on them.
Oh, I see. Yeah, well, Dax never dies, so there's so you can always write a far future book about Dax.
Yeah, she's a captain.
Oh, she becomes a captain. Right. Wow. All right.
Esri Dax is a captain.
Wow. All right. Well, so that's our Christmas special. Please make sure and not be naughty. Don't be naughty.
Yes, indeed.
All right.
Who wants to take us out?
How about Bill? Because this marks Bill's triumphant return to Trekosophy.
Well, that was a few episodes ago, but I'll take
I think I'm still in like guest star status for now. But
this one might air first.
Yeah, you're like how what's his name was always a guest star on Lost in Space. Dr. Smith.
Yeah,
yes.
Dr. Smith.
That guy, the guy who played Dr. Smith, he's always he was a regular, but he was credited as a guest star in every episode because he was never planned to be a regular.
Yep.
He's just too much of a fan favorite to let go, though.
Which says something about the fans. Who do they like the most? The villain.
Maybe that, or maybe it's just that the actor was
villains
really
are almost always more interesting than heroes.
Yeah, or maybe it was just that the actor was really good at what he did, and he fit into the show real well.
I would debate that, but we don't have any more time right now.
Oh, come on. How interesting would Lost in Space be without Dr. Smith?
Oh,
how interesting would be if there were tribbles on the ship.
There's your villain for you, the tribbles.
They had plenty of cute cottony aliens on Lost in Space. They all had arms and legs of some kind, though.
We'll discuss this in the post show then. Bill,
okay,
do your thing.
And that's all the time we have for tonight, folks. Thanks for listening. Trekosophy is brought to you by Louis Bear Bacon. All the grizzly flavor, but only half the calories. Also, it's paid for by a grant from the James T. and Carol M. Kirk Foundation and the support of viewers like you. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, email us at trekosophy@gmail.com, and check us out on the YouTube and in the iPhone's iTunes Store and the Google App Store and paying attention as we expand our digital footprint and try to keep the Trekosophy flowing.
Yes, and keep an eye on Trekosophy.com. You just might see it go through some changes next year.
Merry Christmas!
Merry Trekmas, everyone.
Merry Trekmas, Kapla.
Merry Trekmas.
And a happy new star date destination.
Hello, hello, hello.
Okay. What was the last thing you said? Oh yeah, just my name, Ben McLean. And then I say, okay, I've got locked on to the chestnuts roasting in the open fire. Beam 3 feet away from there. Not into the fire. That catch people on fire. That turned out lame. Drat.
Are you kidding me? The Shatner delivery was perfect.
You stole the transporter man's jokes.
Oh God, I'm gonna end up beamed up somewhere with no clothes on.
I'm really glad we're all together again for a change. That's great.
Don't everybody cheer at once.
Yay! Okay, there we go. Chaw, tribble, chaw, clim, chaw, crow, dribble, chaw, crow, crow, crow.
That'd be good, but the James T. and Carol M. Kirk Foundation, Kirk actually married Carol Marcus?
Marxist.
Carol Marxist. The truth is revealed. Oh wow.
I just had to write a 4-page essay on Marx this week and an 8-page essay on Walter Benjamin. Okay, so cut me some slack. That was some boring.
Karl Marxist and James T. Trotsky.